Welcome back to another ZagsBlog Zoom series interview. I'm your host, Jacob Polacheck, and today my guest is Howard University men's basketball head coach Kenny Blakeney. Blakeney is currently entering his second year as the head men's basketball coach at Howard, historically Black university. Coach, it's great to have you on.
Thank you, Jacob, for having me.
So your program has been in the news this last month with a number of high-profile prospects expressing interest in attending HBCUs in the wake of the George Floyd killing in late May. So first off, what's been your message to the team in the wake of George Floyd's death as a historically Black university?
Well, I think, we've been involved with young men that are, 5-star, 4-star kind of kids since I got the job at Howard. We had 2 young men on our campus for official visits in October. So we've been dabbling in this kind of landscape for a minute. And I think that since Mr. Floyd's death, that it's brought an awareness and I think a sense of purpose for young men to start looking and considering HBCUs. With our program at Howard, we've had a number of different things that we've done. We've started a couple of different initiatives. We have a voter registration initiative with When We All Vote and Vote Rider. Those are 2 they don't have any skin in the game on what political party is that you represent. They just want people to go out and register and vote. So we've been doing that for the last month or so. We did a fundraiser, a virtual fundraiser for 3 weeks for our students that were impacted via COVID. March 16th, March 17th, around that time, our school just abruptly ended for the year on campus. And like a lot of other campuses across the country, young men and women had to find their way home. Some of those young men and women, their families were either furloughed or had challenges in their work field. So what happened is this fundraiser that we had is a student assistant fundraiser that we've donated some money to our university to help those families of the Howard community that have been displaced or have experienced some challenges. And the last thing we've done is we've had a speaker series. And with the speaker series, we've had over 22 speakers since the start of COVID that have come and shared some of their experiences, their journey, but also we've been able to have some really enlightening and engaging conversations surrounding Black Lives Matter and all the different social things that are going on in our country today.
That's great. And so you talked about how you've been working on that initiative with voter registration and then the fundraiser for the students that have had their housing impacted by COVID. Given that today's August 1st, schools expected to come back soon, what would you say are your expectations for the college basketball year? What do you think it's going to look like?
Jacob, that's a great question. I don't know. I really don't know. Being August 1st, I think, it will know more in a week. We'll know more in a couple of days. It just seems that it's rapidly changing every day, and we're getting more information, either, information that's really positive, like we're working towards some type of vaccination, or, information that, states are spiking. And that's starting to affect, young men and women's experiences at universities. Obviously you're a college student and the experience that, what you probably thought you would have maybe a little bit different this year than what you, initially had thought. And that's such it's an incredible, time to be alive and kind of experience this, once in a lifetime, once in a generation kind of moment that we're in right now. So, the big thing is I just hope that we're taking care of ourselves. We're moving forward to trying to get things in place that when it's safe, right? That's the important thing. When it's safe, we're able to move forward with our athletic activities.
And most notably, this offseason, your program received a commitment from a consensus five-star recruit, Makur Maker. He became the highest-ranked recruit in the modern recruiting era to commit to an HBCU. I know you aren't able to talk about him by name since he hasn't signed yet, but just to start things off, can you just please talk about this last month and a half? What's it been like for you? I'm sure your phone has just been off the hook.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, when you start to really think about how does this work, right? Like, how does recruiting a five-star work? I think you also have to understand what the impact of getting a five-star on your campus means. And that impact means that, there's going to be a spike in applicants. Students are going to see your name more in social media and the traditional media areas. So there's going to be an interest about our university. People want to know about Howard University. People want to, they want to learn a little bit more about the university. So sure, there's a spike in applications, and with that comes a certain number of higher GPAs and higher SATs, which, helps your ranking in the U.S. News World Report or the Princeton Reviews. There's probably a spike in bookstore sales, right? So more people are buying university apparel and memorabilia. There's a interest now from sponsors that there wasn't there before. There's an interest from people that want to broadcast your games on TV. I've talked to 20 filmmakers in the last month that want to all do, docuseries or documentaries on our program. So that's kind of the impact of having a five-star kid at a place that's traditionally never had that type of student athlete. So it's certainly an incredible opportunity. And now it's like, how do you build on that? What's the next step to sustain that kind of, I think, momentum that's with your program right now?
And so you talked about the positive impact that could have on your program. How do you think that this recruiting class with that big addition will transform Howard's image overall?
Well, that's determined on the court. We'll be one of the most watched teams in the country. We'll be one of the most scrutinized teams in the country. And now it's like, what do we do with the results? How do we perform? Do we put a product out there that's fun to watch and fun to play? Are we winning? Are we representing ourselves in the right way? Are student athletes, now that they have all of this attention, are they handling it the right way? A big part of I think this, Jacob, is how do people handle success? How do people take what they have and can parlay that into something that is a little bit more lasting and sustainable? So all of those kind of lessons we're going to have to talk about and address as we're moving forward with this wonderful opportunity that we have in front of us.
So in terms of it becoming lasting and sustainable, given how these last couple months have gone, do you think that the trend of five-star players considering and eventually choosing to attend HBCUs, do you think that trend is here to stay?
I don't know if it's a trend or if it's here to stay, but I do think that, some of these five-star athletes, they're African-American, they're Black. I think they want to take a look at seeing or understanding what being educated at a Black university at an HBCU is like. And if we can give more information and that information can be passed down to these young men and they can have more an awareness or education about HBCUs, I think we're winning in that way. Certainly, at the end of the day, if I'm, John Calipari or Coach K, to have a young man on our list is great, but to have him signed and in our universities being educated and having an extracurricular activity in sports, is what we ultimately want. So it's great to be included in this conversation. But I think at the end of the day, it's like even better to have a young man sign and come and be a student athlete at your university.
And this off season, you've also been dealing with the circumstances of the COVID pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, where the recruiting dead period has been extended through August 31st. And I know you talked a little bit about this in your interview with ESPN's Adam Finkelstein recently, but how would you say your allocation of resources in recruiting has changed during this COVID pandemic?
Well, I don't think it's changed. We've been able to be a little bit more, I think, uh, aware of our costs. Our recruiting now has become all digital. So as just doing watching games on the internet, watching games that may be potentially streamed, having an opportunity to kind of work from home has, I think, and for us and for me, made it a little bit more efficient. I work longer hours now. I find myself up at 2:00 in the morning working and making calls on the West Coast or doing things that I can that help build our program. I've taken this opportunity to really try to see how many steps we can take to make our program, I use this word all the time, sustainable, viable. That is really important for us. Like, how can we take this moment? How can we take this opportunity to get better? And it's kind of like as a player during the summer, when there's a typical normal kind of world out here, it's kind of like the question is, I think, like, you'll know what you did during the summer when, practice and games come around in the winter. And that's kind of been my mentality, is that this is an opportunity for us to get better as a program. And whatever we have to do to make that happen, let's dig in and grind and make that work.
And circling back to the recruiting process, what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions that you've seen when it comes to the recruiting process? I know that you went through it as a player. You have a long history of coaching. So what would you say have been some of those biggest misconceptions?
I think the biggest misconception is that you have to go to a blue blood or a Power Five to ultimately achieve your goal. And, if you look at like some of the top players in the NBA right now, you have Dame Lillard, went to Weber State, Steph Curry, Davidson, Pascal Siakam, New Mexico State, Paul George, Fresno State, Kawhi Leonard, San Diego State, CJ McCullough went to went to Lehigh. And then you can go back a little bit, Jacob, to my era. You have the first and second dream team. You have guys like Dennis Rodman. I don't even know where Dennis Rodman went to school, but I know it wasn't a Power Five. John Stockton went to Gonzaga before it was Gonzaga. Excuse me. Karl Malone went to Lafayette Tech, or Louisiana Tech. Joe Dumars, McNeese State. Scottie Pippen, Central Arkansas. David Robinson, Navy. So I think that, there's a lot of, I think, great marketing built around that. You have to go to certain schools to ultimately achieve and reach your goals. And that's just not the case anymore.
And so all the way back to your high school days, you were named Maryland Gatorade Player of the Year at DeMatha under the late, great Morgan Wooten. From there, you decided to attend Duke under Coach K. Was attending an HBCU something that you ever considered as a student? Was that something that you were ever looking into?
I grew up right down the street from Howard University, and it wasn't anything on my agenda. My family doesn't come from a line of people going to colleges and universities. So I had several family members that went to an HBCU. Everybody that's gone through college and universities in my family has gone to an HBCU. So my sister graduated from an HBCU, my uncle, my cousins. So when I was, fortunate enough to be recruited, Howard, which is right down the street from me, never even considered sending me a letter. So in that way, I didn't even think about it. It wasn't even in my world at that point in time. I didn't even know if Howard, was serious about athletics at that point in time. So it wasn't anything that was on my radar, quite honestly. But I think, today there's a different mentality. And I think a lot of the mentality starts with what these young men have seen for, the whole period of their life. You have guys like LeBron James, Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, Colin Kaepernick, Malcolm Jenkins, Chris Long. You have guys out here that have been preaching and walking the walk with social justice, equality, education, and have been politically active for their whole careers, that they've been active in a place of power or a place of influence. And our student athletes that are 16 through 20 years old have kind of witnessed this for their whole lives. So their mentality is different. And this next generation's mentality is going to be different. So, yeah, I do think that, these young men that are looking at at HBCUs, that will trickle down. I don't think this conversation is going to end. And, hopefully I can be a voice to continue this conversation along so it doesn't end and people are aware of things that they have options and opportunities to take a look at for themselves.
And something I really wanted to ask you about was, given your experience of being recruited to a blue blood school like Duke, how does that help you, knowing that experience, having gone through it, when you're recruiting young men to attend Howard, especially now that you're being included in lists for some of these top prospects, top 100 guys?
Yeah, well, I got recruited 30 years ago. You can kind of, my grays are showing a little bit due to not having a haircut or a shave for 5 months. But I think that, from a 30-year-old perspective, I can kind of talk about my experiences. My experiences were great. I love Duke University. I love my time there playing for Coach K. He's someone that, I consider a mentor, a friend. And, he's been very helpful for me while I've been at Howard. So I don't I had Rob Lanier, who's the head coach at Georgia State, once told me when I was a first or second year assistant coach, he gave me some great advice. He said, hey, if you work for Pepsi, sell Pepsi. If you work for Coke, sell Coke. And that's kind of been my mentality. I don't talk about or worry about other universities. I just want to present our beautiful history and rich tradition university, which is Howard University, to student athletes.
And so now, I know I asked you about your expectations for the season. Assuming there is a season, I know you recently said in that interview with Adam that you've been telling your players to stay out of the gym as you're looking out for their safety during this pandemic. What are your plans for the fall to get this team ready?
I don't know. I honestly, I haven't even thought about it. And that's just being 100% transparent. I don't know. Because, have I been working behind the scenes to be prepared for the season? Absolutely. Very hard. But, I don't even know if we can get on the court and play 1-on-1, 5-on-5. I don't know how many people right now in DC, we're in stage 2, that we can have in a gym. We may have to take everything out to the football field and do, conditioning and strength work out there because of the space that you have. So I'm going to be leaning on the shoulders of the experts to kind of give me some guidance and, let me know what we can kind of do. So being transparent, Jacob, and just really honest, I really don't know.
And this is just a fun question that I wanted to ask. Being a DC guy, before we get into your coaching history, I just want to know, what's the go-to place to eat in DC for you? What's your go-to place?
Great question. It's a neighborhood place in my area where I grew up. It's called Twin Dragon, and it's a Chinese place. And anybody from Northwest DC or in the vicinity, they would all know Twin Dragon. It's awesome. It's just a little carry out. You can't eat in. You got to call 30 minutes before and pick up. But they have the best egg rolls and the best shrimp fried rice I've ever had in my life. So that's kind of my go-to place. But then, one of the kind of staples of DC in the food area is chicken and mambo. So if you ever come to DC, please have someone take you to get some chicken and mambo.
Awesome. Both of my parents went to American University out in DC, and I got a lot of family out there now. So the thing that sticks out to me about you, like I said, is just the wide range of different roles that you've held, organizations you've been a part of. You've played and coached under some great coaches over the years. So if you don't mind, I'm going to name off a few coaches you've worked with, and I just want you to talk about what comes to mind when you think of them in terms of their coaching styles. So as I previously mentioned, you played under the late great Morgan Wooten in high school. What comes to mind when you think of Coach Wooten and his style?
His warmth, his like grandfatherly kind of like warmth. But you know, there's a passion, there's a competitiveness, there is a sense of urgency in which he coached, and but he did it in a very loving, educational kind of way. You know, Coach Wooten was a teacher for 45 years. He was a history teacher. So you have him coaching and teaching in a way that is, I think, conducive for a high school student athlete, which for me was very beneficial and it really resonated with me. And
from there, you went and attended Duke under Hall of Fame coach Mike Krzyzewski, were part of a couple national championship rosters, in 91 as a redshirt, 92 as a role player. So what's the first word that, or what are your first thoughts that come to mind when you think of Coach K's style?
The GOAT. Coach was like the progression from Morgan Wooten, from Coach Wooten. And for me, it was a lot of the same. You know, the way he communicated, the way that he taught, the sense of urgency, the passion, the intensity that he brings every day. You know, he's the GOAT, and he's the GOAT for a reason. He's a very well-thought, well-read person. And I think, you know, he tries to really reach into a young man's soul and understand what that person needs and tries to give what that young man really needs. So, you know, when I think of Coach K, that's kind of what I think about.
And then right out of college, you had your first ever assistant coaching position at James Madison under the Hall of Famer Lefty Driesell. What comes to mind when you think of his style?
When I think of him, I think undervalued, underappreciated, a guy that, you know, he's in the top 10 wins in the history of our game, our collegiate game. And, you know, that goes unnoticed way too much. And I think his intelligence goes unknown way too much. You know, he's a guy, and I don't know if many people know this. You know, I think Coach has you know, an undergraduate degree from Duke, and then I think he has his master's from like William and Mary. So a very sharp guy, but you know, people always wanted to make it about like him being a recruiter or those kind of things. And you know, he's the most organized dude I've ever been around. He has manuals that he put together that are about recruiting and how to, you know, be a coach and how to lead, and just an extremely well-read guy, a very thoughtful guy also. And for me, he allowed, you know, a young assistant coach at 23 years old. That was I only got paid $3,000 that year. And he allowed me to do everything from game planning to scouting reports to working out players, you know, having ownership in the program. So I'm forever grateful for Coach Lefty, you know, getting me in the business and giving me an opportunity.
And then you have current Notre Dame coach, Mike Bray. He's someone that coached you when he was an assistant at Duke, and then who you coached with on his staff at Delaware. So what comes to mind when you try to describe Coach Bray's style?
Well, Coach Bray's he's like my father that I never had. Even though our years aren't that different, I got to know Coach Bray when I was a freshman in high school at DeMatha, and he was a high school varsity assistant coach and history teacher at DeMatha. Um, so I go back to him with when I was 13, 14 years old. And he's been a guy that has been incredibly influential and important in my life. Coach Bray's one of the best communicators, hands down, in this game. He is extremely smart. And one of the things with him, he believes in a keep it simple, stupid method, the KISS method. There's not a whole lot that, goes on with his offenses and his defensive schemes. But yet he's been one of the most, effective coaches. If you look in the last probably 5 to 7 years, his teams every year are some of the most effective teams on the offensive end. And he does an unbelievable job understanding spacing, understanding ball movement, understanding how the game should be played the right way. He's just been a guy that in my life, like I said, I'm not here talking to you right now if it's not for him.
Awesome. And I know you've learned a lot from Howard head coach Tommy Amaker. You talked about him in your recent interview with Adam Finkelstein. So what comes to mind when you think of his coaching style?
He is he has a wisdom that's just next level. And anybody that knows him knows that. When I was working with him, I would hear him in his office beside me, receiving phone calls from, a number of different people that you would be like, wow, that's pretty cool. And they're all calling and asking Tommy about guidance and direction and his thoughts. He's one of our top thought leaders in the game. And it's no secret why he's, on the McClendon Foundation board and doing wonderful things to help, I think, promote and evolve our game of college basketball. He is very undervalued himself. And I think, he's done such an incredible job at Harvard over the last, 13, 14 years that he's been there or so, and taking that program from being a kind of a Division III low D1 program and has made it one of the elite programs in the country. I would think that the Harvard job is one of the most prestigious jobs in the country, with Power 5 jobs included. He's going to have a chance year in and year out because he's positioned that program to have an opportunity to be at the top of his league. So he's moved mountains and have kind of, done something amazing on a campus where there's been so many things that have been accomplished that are incredible.
And so to sum it all up, in all of the time that you spent as a player, as a coach, what would you say is the greatest piece of coaching advice that you've ever received?
I think Tommy and Coach Bray both have, when we've talked, it's almost like, you treat young men like you would want them to treat your kids, or like you would want a coach to treat your kid. And that's been kind of the method for me that I've tried to coach. I say that, the greatest compliment that I think a coach can get is that he's fair. Not that he's right all the time, or not that he's really good all the time or anything like that, but that he's fair. And that means you've tried your best to keep things as honest and as I think forthright as possible, and in a dignified and I think humane way. We have a business that is that's very intense and with emotions and with enthusiasm and passion. Things can easily be heated and taken out of context or taken the wrong way. So if a young man or a young, lady, after they're done their eligibility and they felt like their coach was fair, that's probably an unbelievable job that coach did with that person.
And before we close things, I just want to let you talk. You're entering your second year at Howard. What do you want people to know about this team you got coming in and just this Howard program in general?
Well, I think that, with our program, we represent and we stand on the shoulders of giants. We stand on the shoulders of Thurgood Marshall and Andrew Young and David Dinkins and, Governor Wilder and Kamala Harris and Toni Morrison and Tanashi Coates. And I can go down the list of incredible, influential alums that we stand on the shoulders of. And at the end of the day, we would just like to make the Howard community, the Howard alums, and the university proud, that we're representing ourselves in a way that, those people that I've mentioned before have, sacrificed and done incredible work. We just want to try to do the same thing. So if we're walking in those footsteps of those giants, and we're doing things that are great socially, civically, and in the community, I think that our university's community will be very happy.
And the last question I have, try to ask most of the people I interview this: what's one thing about you that most people don't really know? What's one thing about you that people don't really know?
That I can skateboard. And I still do skateboard some.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you again. And good luck this year. Hopefully there's a season. And it was great having you on.
Thank you, Jacob. I appreciate you.